Sir, are you Ghost?
That name has not been mentioned in over 15 years.
Veteran, wore no medals, until a Navy SEAL spoke his code name out loud. The fluorescent lights of the Department of Veterans Affairs office in San Diego cast harsh shadows across the waiting room as 58-year-old David Ghost Sullivan sat quietly in a corner chair, his worn baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. Unlike the other veterans around him, David wore no military insignia, no unit patches, no ribbons or medals that might hint at his service record. His plain gray hoodie and faded jeans gave him the appearance of any middle-aged man struggling with bureaucracy. David had been coming to this VA office for 3 years, trying to get approval for disability benefits related to injuries sustained during his military service. Each visit ended the same way: forms to fill out requests for documentation that didn't exist, and polite but firm denials from clerks who couldn't verify his service record in their computer systems. The problem was simple but insurmountable. David Sullivan had never officially existed in the military. For 22 years, he had served in units so classified that their operations were denied by the government, their members' identities scrubbed from official records, and their missions buried in files that would remain sealed for decades. David had been recruited straight out of high school by men who never gave their real names, trained at facilities that didn't appear on any map, and deployed to conflicts that were never acknowledged by the Pentagon. He had operated under dozens of false identities, carried out missions that saved thousands of lives, and earned decorations that were immediately classified and locked away. Now, at 58, David was paying the price for his invisible service. The injuries he had sustained during a classified operation in Eastern Europe had left him with chronic pain, PTSD, and a traumatic brain injury that made it difficult to hold steady employment. But because his service record was classified, he couldn't prove his military connection to qualify for VA benefits. The other veterans in the waiting room wore their service proudly. Vietnam vets with their unit patches, Gulf War veterans with their campaign ribbons, younger soldiers from Iraq and Afghanistan with their combat badges. David envied their ability to display their service openly, to be recognized for their sacrifices. David Sullivan called the clerk from behind the counter. David stood slowly, his injured back protesting the movement, and approached the desk, where he would once again be told that his service couldn't be verified, that he needed documentation. He couldn't provide, that the system had no record of his existence. What David didn't know was that today would be different. Today, someone would recognize him not by his face or his name, but by something far more dangerous, his operational code name from missions that officially never happened. David approached the VA counter with the resigned patience of someone who had been through this process dozens of times before. The clerk, a middle-aged woman named Patricia Wong, looked up from her computer screen with the expression of someone who had heard every sob story and excuse in the book. "Mr. Sullivan, I see you're here for another disability claim review," Patricia said, pulling up his file on her computer. "I have to tell you, we still don't have any record of your military service in our system." David nodded, having expected this response. "I understand, ma'am. I was hoping that maybe new records had been released, or that someone might have found additional documentation." Patricia scrolled through David's file, which was frustratingly thin. "Mr. Sullivan, I see that you've claimed service from 1985 to 2007, but we have no record of you in any branch of the military during that time period. No basic training records, no unit assignments, no discharge papers." "I understand how that looks," David said quietly, "but I can assure you that I served. The nature of my service makes it difficult to document through normal channels." Patricia had heard variations of this story before veterans whose records had been lost in fires, destroyed in computer crashes, or misplaced in bureaucratic shuffles. But David's case was different. He claimed to have served for 22 years without leaving any trace in the military's personnel systems. "Mr. Sullivan, without proper documentation, I can't approve your disability claim. Have you tried contacting your former unit commanders or fellow service members who might be able to verify your service?" David almost smiled at the irony of the question. "Ma'am, the people I served with don't officially exist either. And the commanders, well, most of them would deny ever knowing me if asked directly." Behind David in the waiting area, a younger man in his 30s had been listening to the conversation with growing interest. Commander Marcus Thompson was a Navy SEAL who had come to the VA office to update his own records after returning from a deployment. Something about David's voice, his bearing, and the nature of his claims had caught Thompson's attention. Thompson had heard stories during his SEAL training about ghost operators, men who had served in units so classified that their existence was denied by the government. These were legends whispered about in special operations communities, stories of soldiers who had carried out the most dangerous and sensitive missions without recognition or acknowledgement. As Patricia continued to explain why David's claim couldn't be processed, Thompson found himself studying the older man more carefully. There was something familiar about David's posture, the way he held himself, the controlled way he spoke, even when frustrated. "Mr. Sullivan," Patricia said with finality, "I'm sorry, but without proper documentation, there's nothing more I can do for you. You'll need to provide military records, discharge papers, or testimony from verified service members before we can proceed." David nodded and turned to leave, his shoulders sagging slightly with the weight of another rejection. As he walked past Thompson, the SEAL caught a glimpse of something that made his blood run cold, a small scar on David's neck, barely visible above his collar. Thompson had seen that exact scar before in classified briefings about a legendary operator who had carried out some of the most dangerous missions in modern military history. The scar was from a knife wound sustained during a hostage rescue in Somalia, a mission that had saved the lives of 12 American civilians. "Excuse me," Thompson called out as David reached the door. "Are you David Sullivan?" David stopped and turned, his expression cautious. "Yes, why?" Thompson stood up, his mind racing as he tried to remember the details from those classified briefings. "Sir, I'm Commander Thompson, Navy SEALs. I think we need to talk." Commander Thompson approached David with the careful respect that one special operations professional shows another. There was something in David's bearing, the way he moved, the alertness in his eyes despite his obvious fatigue, that confirmed Thompson's growing suspicions. "Mr. Sullivan, could I speak with you privately for a moment?" Thompson asked, gesturing toward a quiet corner of the waiting room. David studied the younger man, noting the sealed trident pin on Thompson's uniform and the confident way he carried himself. "Commander, I appreciate your interest, but I don't think there's anything you can do to help with my situation." "Sir, with respect, I think there might be. I've heard stories about operators who worked outside normal military channels, men who carried out missions that were so classified they were denied by the government. David's expression didn't change, but Thompson noticed a slight tension in his shoulders, the reaction of someone who had spent decades keeping secrets. "Commander, I'm not sure what you're referring to." Thompson lowered his voice. "Sir, during my SEAL training, we heard about legendary operators, men who had no official records but who had carried out some of the most important missions in modern history. There were stories about a hostage rescue in Somalia, a mission that saved 12 American civilians." David's poker face remained intact, but Thompson pressed on. "The story was that the operator who led that mission was wounded during the rescue, a knife wound to the neck that left a distinctive scar." Thompson's eyes moved to the small scar visible above David's collar. "Sir, I think you might be someone very special, and I think the VA needs to understand who they're dealing with." David was quiet for a long moment, weighing his options. For 22 years, he had kept his secrets, had lived with the burden of invisible service. But his injuries were getting worse. His financial situation was desperate, and the VA's continued denials were pushing him toward homelessness. "Commander, even if what you're suggesting were true, how would that help? The missions you're talking about are classified above your pay grade. No one is going to confirm or deny anything." Thompson smiled. "Sir, you'd be surprised what connections exist in the special operations community. Sometimes the right person saying the right thing can open doors that seemed permanently closed." Thompson pulled out his phone and made a call. "Master Chief, it's Thompson. I need you to come down to the VA office immediately. I think I've found someone you need to meet." Within 30 minutes, Master Chief Petty Officer James Rodriguez arrived at the VA office. Rodriguez was a legend in the SEAL community, a man who had served for 30 years and had connections throughout the special operations world. He took one look at David and his expression changed immediately. "Jesus Christ," Rodriguez whispered. "It can't be." Thompson looked between the two men. "Master Chief, do you recognize him?" Rodriguez approached David slowly, his eyes studying the older man's face. "Sir, I was a young SEAL in 1994 when we were briefed on a hostage rescue mission in Somalia. We were told that a single operator had infiltrated a terrorist compound and rescued 12 American civilians." David remained silent, but Rodriguez continued. "We were shown classified footage of the mission. The operator moved like a ghost, took out 6 terrorists without raising an alarm, and extracted the hostages through a route that should have been impossible." Rodriguez paused, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "The briefing officer told us that if we ever met this operator, we would recognize him by his call sign, a name that was never to be spoken outside of classified briefings." Thompson leaned forward. "What was the call sign, Master Chief?" Rodriguez looked directly at David. "Ghost. The operator's call sign was Ghost." The reaction was immediate and unmistakable. David's carefully maintained composure cracked for just a moment, and Thompson saw the truth in his eyes. "Sir," Rodriguez said, his voice filled with respect, "are you Ghost?" David looked around the VA waiting room at the other veterans who were struggling with their own battles against bureaucracy, at the clerks who had no idea what kind of man they had been turning away for 3 years. "Master Chief," David said quietly, "that name hasn't been spoken aloud in over 15 years. Rodriguez came to attention and rendered a perfect military salute. "Sir, it's an honor to meet you. Your mission saved hundreds of lives and prevented terrorist attacks that would have killed thousands of innocent people." Thompson was stunned. He had suspected that David was someone special, but he hadn't realized he was in the presence of a living legend. "Ghost," Rodriguez said, using the call sign with reverence, "we need to get you the recognition and benefits you've earned, and I know exactly who to call." The revelation of David's true identity as Ghost created an immediate crisis that went far beyond a simple VA benefits claim. Master Chief Rodriguez understood that they were dealing with one of the most classified operators in U.S. military history, someone whose very existence was a state secret. "Commander Thompson," Rodriguez said urgently, "we need to be very careful here. Ghost's operations were so classified that acknowledging his identity could compromise ongoing national security operations." David nodded grimly. "Master Chief, this is exactly why I've been living in the shadows for 15 years. The moment my identity becomes known, it puts people at risk. People who are still operating in the field, people whose lives depend on the secrecy of these programs." Thompson was beginning to understand the complexity of the situation. "Sir, but you can't continue to live without recognition or benefits. You've sacrificed everything for this country." "Commander, the sacrifice was made willingly. But now I'm facing homelessness, my injuries are getting worse, and I can't get medical care because I don't officially exist." Rodriguez pulled out his secure phone. "Ghost, I'm going to make some calls. There are people in the Pentagon who remember your operations as people who have the authority to help without compromising security." The first call Rodriguez made was to Admiral Patricia Chen, the current commander of Naval Special Warfare Command. Chen had been a young intelligence officer during some of Ghost's operations and understood the critical nature of his missions. "Admiral, this is Master Chief Rodriguez. I need to speak with you about a classified matter involving a former operator codenamed Ghost." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Master Chief, that's a name I haven't heard in many years. What's the situation?" "Ma'am, Ghost is sitting in a VA office in San Diego, unable to get benefits because his service record is classified. He's been denied help for 3 years. Admiral Chen's response was immediate. "Master Chief, secure that location. I'm sending a team immediately. Ghost is under federal protection protocols. His identity and location are now classified." Within minutes, the VA office was swarming with federal agents and military personnel. The other veterans in the waiting room were evacuated, and the building was placed under temporary security lockdown. Agent Sarah Walsh from the Defense Intelligence Agency approached David with a mixture of respect and concern. "Sir, I'm Agent Walsh, DIA. We need to discuss your situation immediately." David looked around at the sudden security presence. "Agent Walsh, I just wanted to get medical benefits. I didn't intend to create an international incident." "Sir, your identity as Ghost is one of the most closely guarded secrets in the intelligence community. The fact that it's been spoken aloud in a public place has triggered multiple security protocols." Admiral Chen arrived within an hour, accompanied by officials from the Pentagon, the CIA, and the Department of Veterans Affairs. Her first action was to speak privately with David about the security implications of his exposure. "Ghost," Admiral Chen said, using his call sign with the respect it deserved, Your operations prevented 3 major terrorist attacks on American soil. Your identity has been protected because there are still people who would kill you if they knew you were alive. David nodded. Admiral, I understand the risks, but I can't continue to live in the shadows while my health deteriorates. I need medical care, and I need some form of recognition for my service. Sir, we're going to solve this problem, but it's going to require some creative solutions. We can't acknowledge your service publicly, but we can create a classified pathway for you to receive benefits. The crisis deepened when Agent Walsh received intelligence that David's identity had been compromised through social media. Someone in the VA office had recorded video of the confrontation and posted it online before the security lockdown. Admiral, Agent Walsh reported, "We have a problem. Video of Ghost's identification is already circulating on social media. His location and identity are now public knowledge." Admiral Chen's expression hardened. How much time do we have before hostile intelligence services identify him? Based on facial recognition technology and the speed of information sharing, probably less than 24 hours. David looked at the officials surrounding him and made a decision that would change everything. Admiral, I've been hiding for 15 years. Maybe it's time to stop running and start fighting back. Sir, what are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that we use my exposure as an opportunity. Let the world know that Ghost exists, that America has operators who will go anywhere and do anything to protect innocent lives. The room fell silent as the implications of David's suggestion sank in. He was proposing to step out of the shadows and become a public symbol of American special operations, a move that would either make him a hero or paint a target on his back that would never disappear. Admiral Chen convened an emergency meeting in a secure conference room at the nearby naval base, bringing together representatives from every major intelligence and military organization. The question before them was unprecedented: how to handle the public exposure of one of America's most classified operators. Ladies and gentlemen, Admiral Chen began, we're facing a situation that has no precedent in modern intelligence history. Ghost's identity has been compromised, and we need to decide how to proceed. CIA Director Michael Torres spoke first. Admiral, the traditional response would be to relocate Ghost under a new identity and continue to deny his existence. We have protocols for this situation. David, sitting at the table in his plain civilian clothes, looked around at the assembled officials. Director Torres, with respect, I've been relocated and hidden for 15 years. I'm tired of running, and I'm tired of pretending that my service didn't matter. General Patricia Williams from the Joint Chiefs of Staff leaned forward. Ghost, your service absolutely mattered. Your operation saved hundreds of lives and prevented attacks that could have killed thousands. But acknowledging your existence publicly puts you at enormous risk. General, I'm already at risk. My health is failing. I can't get medical care, and I'm facing homelessness. What's the point of staying hidden if I'm going to die in obscurity? Agent Walsh from the DIA presented the intelligence assessment. Sir, we've identified at least 6 hostile intelligence services that are already working to confirm your identity. If we don't control the narrative, they will. David stood up, his bearing suddenly more military despite his civilian clothes. Then let's control the narrative. Let's tell the world that America has operators who will go into hell itself to bring our people home. Admiral Chin studied David's face, seeing the determination of a man who had made peace with the consequences of his decision. "Ghost, if we do this, there's no going back. You'll become a public figure, a symbol. That comes with both recognition and danger." "Admiral, I've lived with danger my entire adult life. What I haven't lived with is recognition for my service or the ability to help other veterans who are struggling with similar issues." The climax of the meeting came when Secretary of Defense James Patterson joined the conference via secure video link from the Pentagon. Patterson had been briefed on Ghost's operations during his previous role as Deputy Secretary, and he understood the significance of the decision they were facing. "Ghost," Secretary Patterson said, "I've read the classified reports of your operations. You've served this country with a level of dedication and sacrifice that few people could understand. If you're willing to step into the public eye, we'll support you." "Mr. Secretary, I want to do more than just step into the public eye. I want to become an advocate for classified operators who are struggling with similar issues. There are dozens of men and women who served in programs like mine, and they're all facing the same problems I've faced." Admiral Chin saw the opportunity immediately. "Sir, we could create a new position, a special advocate for classified veterans. Someone who can work within the system to help operators get the benefits they've earned without compromising ongoing operations." The Secretary of Defense nodded. "Admiral, I like that idea. Ghost, would you be willing to take on that role?" David felt a surge of purpose that he hadn't experienced since his operational days. "Mr. Secretary, I would be honored to serve in that capacity." The final piece of the plan came together when Commander Thompson suggested a public ceremony that would acknowledge Ghost's service without revealing specific operational details. Sir Thompson said to Admiral Chen, "What if we held a ceremony where Ghost receives the decorations he's earned? We don't have to reveal specific missions, but we can acknowledge his service and sacrifice." Admiral Chen smiled. "Commander, that's exactly what we're going to do. Ghost, you're going to receive the Medal of Honor, the Navy Cross, and the Silver Star in a public ceremony at the Pentagon." David was stunned. "Admiral, I never expected public recognition. I just wanted medical benefits and the ability to help other veterans." "Sir, you're going to get all of that and more, but first we need to prepare you for what's coming. Once we announce your existence, you're going to become one of the most famous veterans in America." The preparation for Ghost's public emergence was intensive and comprehensive. Media specialists worked with him on public speaking. Security experts developed protection protocols, and military historians helped craft a narrative that would acknowledge his service without compromising national security. The climax came during a press conference at the Pentagon, where Secretary Patterson announced the existence of classified special operations programs and introduced David Sullivan, code-named Ghost, as one of America's most decorated secret warriors. "Ladies and gentlemen," Secretary Patterson said to the assembled media, "today we're acknowledging the service of operators who have served in the shadows for decades. These men and women have carried out missions that were so sensitive they were denied by the government, but their service has been critical to our national security." David stepped to the podium wearing his military dress uniform for the first time in 15 years. The uniform bore the ribbons and decorations he had earned but never been able to display publicly. "My name is David Sullivan," he said, his voice carrying across the packed auditorium. "For 22 years, I served under the code name Ghost. Today, I'm stepping out of the shadows to advocate for veterans who have served in classified programs and who deserve recognition for their sacrifice." The room erupted in applause as David continued. "I want every veteran to know that your service matters, whether it was acknowledged publicly or carried out in secret. We all took the same oath, we all served the same flag, and we all deserve the same respect and benefits." As David spoke, Commander Thompson and Master Chief Rodriguez watched from the audience, knowing that they had witnessed the transformation of a forgotten warrior into a public advocate for America's most secret heroes. 1 year after David Ghost Sullivan stepped out of the shadows, the landscape for classified veterans had been transformed. The Ghost Foundation, established with David as its director, had helped over 200 former Special Operations personnel navigate the complex process of obtaining benefits for classified service. David's public emergence had created a pathway for other Ghost operators to come forward and receive recognition for their service. The Pentagon had established new protocols for acknowledging classified service without compromising ongoing operations, and the VA had created specialized departments for handling the unique needs of Special Operations veterans. "The most important thing we've accomplished," David would tell audiences during his speaking engagements, "is showing other classified veterans that they don't have to suffer in silence. There are ways to get help without compromising national security." Commander Thompson had been promoted and assigned to work directly with the Ghost Foundation, helping to identify and assist other veterans who had served in classified programs. Master Chief Rodriguez had become David's security advisor, ensuring that the former operator's public profile didn't make him a target for hostile intelligence services. The Medal of Honor ceremony at the White House had been watched by millions of Americans, many of whom were learning for the first time about the existence of classified Special Operations programs. President Harrison had used the ceremony to announce new funding for veteran mental health programs and expanded benefits for Special Operations personnel. David Sullivan represents the best of American service, the president had said during the ceremony. He served in the shadows for over 2 decades, asking for nothing in return except the knowledge that he was protecting his fellow Americans. David's story had also inspired a new generation of military recruits who understood that service sometimes meant sacrificing recognition and glory for the greater good. Military recruiting stations reported increased interest in Special Operations programs, with many young people citing Ghost's example as inspiration. Most importantly for David personally, he had finally received the medical care he needed for his service-connected injuries. The VA had not only approved his disability claim, but had also provided him with comprehensive treatment for his PTSD and traumatic brain injury. "I spent 15 years invisible," David would reflect during interviews. "Now, I use my visibility to help others who are still in the shadows. That's the best mission I've ever been given." The veteran who had worn no medals had become a symbol of service sacrifice and the unbreakable bonds that unite those who serve in America's most dangerous and secret operations. This story demonstrates how recognition and advocacy can transform not just individual lives, but entire systems designed to serve those who have sacrificed for their country. David's journey from invisible operator to public advocate shows the power of courage, brotherhood, and the willingness to step forward when others need help.